about the influx of criminal gangs from other countries into Chicago.
The real issue is that America has allowed gangs to enter our country. Gangs that they would consider ex-terrorist groups that are formed here. We are terrorist groups if we're in a gang. They let terrorists in our country.
The Reverend Corey Brooks also said to me he's disgusted with Democratic policies and said that Black Lives Matter, for example, has never reached out to help him or anyone else trying to improve conditions on the South Side.
Chicago is a blue city, and Illinois is a blue state. There's no doubt about it that the majority of our neighborhood, they're going to continue to vote Democrat until they wake up. The good news is that there are a lot of people who are responding and waking up and saying, listen, we're not going to take this. We're not going to stand for this. We're going to vote differently. And they're now accepting some of the values that I hold dear and some of the values that the conservative Republican Party holds so dear. And so for a lot of people, it's not about the person, it's about the policies that we're fed up with. And as a result, I think this is going to be the largest amount of people who have voted for the Republican president in Chicago that we've seen.
I also spoke to one Venezuelan man who was so scared of being identified that he put a hoodie on and refused to face the camera. He told me in Spanish that he had to flee the building where he was being housed because a Venezuelan criminal gang took it over. He said if they knew he was talking, they'd end his family's life back in Venezuela with one bullet.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Whoever thought that Chicago gangbangers would be more patriotic than the Democrat Party? But that's where we're at in 2024 because they're lashing out against Democrats and the illegal immigrants that are being moved into their neighborhood. And as you have these illegal immigrants being moved into their neighborhood, Southside Chicago, you have gang members being moved in, okay? Notoriously, the Tren de Aragua gang is operating within the United States, and it is a disaster, right? I mean, we've covered this story out of Aurora, Colorado, that the mainstream liberal media swore up and down was fake, and then turned out that it was true about the Venezuelan gangs taking over the apartments and all types of stuff that honestly should never happen in this country, right? It should never happen in this country. But yet, it is happening. This is what we're saying. And the Democrats are telling you, you got to be okay with it, right? If you're not okay with it, then you are a racist. However, there are a significant amount of people in this country who are no longer buying into the, well, if you don't support Democrats and everything they want to do, then you're racist card. They're not buying into that anymore. And they're lashing out against Democrats because they realize that the writing is on the wall, right? The Democrats and their open border policies are allowing illegal immigrants to slowly but surely replace people in their neighborhoods. The communities that they've grown up in their whole lives are being taken over by people who are not from the United States at the expense of the people who live in that neighborhood. I mean, literally, it is being paid for via taxpayer dollars. And the gangbangers of Chicago are fed up. They're fed up with it to the point where they're lashing out against the Venezuelan migrants. And I gotta tell you guys, this right here is a recipe for disaster, right? This is a recipe for more violence and bloodshed, and something has to be done about this ASAP. This is why we need mass deportation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Gangs in Chicago are angry over the influx of migrants and criminals in their city. They say money that should be going to the African American community on the South Side is instead going to what they call non-citizens, and warn that turf wars between Chicago's gangs and groups like Venezuela's Tren de Aragua could see Chicago, quote, go up in flames. Photographer Matt McDermott and I traveled to Chicago's South Side to see what was happening for ourselves after we heard about a police report last month that the Tren de Aragua gang had taken over an office building there. We spoke to a number of young, hardcore gang members, as well as gang elders who have retired from the life, and just regular citizens who are very much part of the community. And they're all furious at the estimated $500 million that's reportedly been funneled toward new migrants in Chicago since 2022.
Wow, $500 million. $500 million. I guarantee you it was more than that, honestly. $500 million that they could have spent on housing homeless vets. They could have spent on upgrading schools, on getting more resources into the community, right? More jobs, more opportunities, things like that. No, they spent it on illegals. Spend it on illegals. But yeah, these people will turn around and tell you that, hey, if you don't support this, then, you know, you're a racist. You're a bigot, right? If you don't support illegals coming into your community, being taken care of with your taxpayer dollars, and then you eventually losing your job, right, and being replaced. Because what happens, right? What we've seen happen, okay, in some of these communities, like, for example, Springfield, is that these illegals are getting so much government assistance that is actually making the cost of living go up, right? So they're getting these vouchers to be able to rent places, to buy homes. They're working below market rates in jobs that are open. So what is happening? They're driving down wages. And because they're getting that government subsidy, although their wages are low, they can still afford housing and rent. So now there's a higher demand for housing and rent because you have more of these people that have come into the area. Guess what? Housing prices go up, rent prices go up, and it makes it unaffordable for the people who are already there, who've been there the whole time, right? That is the actual real story out of Springfield that the media should have covered, but they ignored because, again, they don't want you to know about that part, right? They just want you to think that it's hateful and bigoted to be against this agenda that is hurting Americans.
And they aren't happy either about what they say are Venezuelan criminal gangs that are leaving the shelters and spilling out into the South Side into abandoned buildings. I spoke to Tyrone Muhammad of Ex-Cons for Trump, who runs a street patrol and violence prevention program. He's gone straight since his days as an enforcer for the Gangster Disciples. And he said the situation is very tense on the South Side as turf battles between the local gangs and Venezuelan migrants heat up.
It is impossible to release gang members and criminals into our country through the borders and broken walls, and then infiltrate them in our community that's already impoverished, that's already broken, that's already disinvested. And when the black gangs, the leadership in the black gangs in Chicago get fed up with the illegalities and the criminal activity of these migrants or non-citizens, the city of Chicago is gonna go up in smoke, it's gonna go up in flame, and it's gonna be nothing that the National Guard or our government can do about it when the bloodshed hit the streets, blacks against migrants.
Wow. Honestly, I got goosebumps because I personally think that's what's going to happen. 100%. They're on a crash course towards a full-blown gang war in Southside Chicago. And there are going to be a lot of black folks that are going to lose their lives. There are going to be a lot of Americans that are going to lose their lives. Right? That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen because these gangs aren't playing around, right? These migrants, these illegals, they're not playing around, right? They're used to that type of street justice back in Venezuela where it's lawless. And they're bringing that lawlessness here, okay? And they know they can get away with it in these Democrat cities, especially in a city like Chicago where you got soft on crime mayor Brandon Johnson, who loves the illegals, okay? So you can already imagine the train wreck that this is going to be, right? This is going to be an absolute train wreck. This is going to be a disaster. There's going to be so much bloodshed, all funded by Democrats. You got a soft on crime mayor. The police are struggling to keep up with staff because nobody wants to be a police officer anymore. Nobody wants to deal with that, okay, because they can't do their jobs, right? Brandon Johnson just continues to pour more money into helping these illegals take over these neighborhoods. So if this thing really heats up, I have no confidence whatsoever that Brandon Johnson will be able to handle it. I have no confidence whatsoever because the leadership in Chicago is piss poor. Again, this is going to be a disaster. I'm telling you guys.
Zach Massey did time in state prison with Tyrone Muhammad, although he's only 27. He's a leader on the streets and said he's disgusted by the money going to Venezuelan migrants at the expense, he says, of the African-American community.
And I finally actually talked to him on the translator app, and he told me all the things that he got going on, how they help him get a car, apartment, clothes, link. So it's just I just be looking at it like they ain't got no social security number. Where they come from? He probably not even here legally.
Yeah, they gonna say, the liberal media is gonna say when this story goes viral, right? Because it will, they're going to say, oh, this is misinformation, right? It's misinformation. The government's not helping illegals get money, right? They're not helping the illegals buy houses and buy cars and stuff. I mean, I've covered these types of stories where you have these anecdotal accounts, testimonies that, hey, illegals are buying new vehicles, buying houses, getting these vouchers to pay rent. Well, because they're not being directly funded by the government. The government, they're funding these nonprofits, aka their liberal buddies, who are then taking that money and giving it to the illegals to do X, Y, and Z with it, right? That's what's happening.
They get right here, they get quick housing, quick funding, food. They get cars with no license. They can't even read English and stuff like that. So they get all these perks when they get here, and we still here starving. So what we gonna do about it? Are y'all gonna listen to our cries?
Corey Rogers was a Blackstone gang member for years. He drove us around the South Side and showed us areas where he said Tren de Aragua and other criminal gangs are setting up shop and what he called showing the flag, which means brandishing their weapons in front of like a housing project.
The migrants that are coming, they're taking over every block right now in this area. Right now, you don't see them because they come out at night. They said they took this courtway over probably by last week. He said it was 100 Venezuelans standing out in the front right here.
Terry, is it an abandoned building? How do they just take it over?
They just, when you take over something, you just stand outside, and that's called showing the flag.
What kind of guns?
Semi-automatics, anything you name, you're gonna see it on the street. These boys got so many big guns that if they're 150 pounds, the gun is bigger than them. I swear.
But they know how to handle it, right? They know what. Tell me about the fact that they're criminals, right? This is a criminal element. These aren't just a bunch of Venezuelans that walked over the border and used to be gardeners back home, right?
Right. No. And they come from the gangland. They come from rougher gangs than us.
Yeah, but gun control works though, according to Democrats, right? According to Democrats, gun control works. Except when it doesn't, right? It doesn't. Because apparently they're smuggling guns into these migrant shelters, these facilities, via the food that comes in, all of the supplies that come in and stuff like that. They're smuggling weapons, they're smuggling drugs, they're running prostitution rings. I'm telling you, I mean, these liberal cities, they're going to turn into third world countries. That's what's going to happen. I mean, New York City has basically become Caracas at this point.
A Venezuelan gang has now reached New York City. Law enforcement officials are working to control the growth of Tren de Aragua, a gang that started at a Venezuelan prison, making its way to the United States and other countries. The NYPD says the gang is behind a string of store thefts targeting high-end items. Officers have also connected Tren de Aragua to ride-by robberies, which is when gang members ride around on scooters, snatching cell phones and expensive watches from people on the street. The NYPD chief of detectives says there were 415 scooter-related robberies at the beginning of June. But as of September 10th, that number has doubled. So far, the NYPD has identified 24 Tren de Aragua members out of the 14,000 known gang members in the city. But they believe the number of Tren de Aragua members is much higher. Police say they've been quick to blend in, and the gang is believed to recruit members arriving in the U.S. from inside the city's migrant shelters.
Residents and community leaders in Jackson Heights, Queens are once again sounding the alarm. They say crime of all kinds continues to take over the bustling Roosevelt Avenue business district.
Every corner is bad. I just witnessed a major drug deal, a wad of money right on the corner.
Those who live and work on or near the popular avenue say they are inundated with shoplifters and sidewalks with dozens of sex workers. A scene they say has gotten worse in the last few months.
There's a lot of good people, a lot of immigrants who like to work, you know, like you see in the restaurants, like me and everybody. But a little new immigrants, they come here, you know, to rob people and a lot of prostitution.
Pix 11 News has exposed the illegal business of sex workers multiple times over the years, including when the NYPD broke down the doors to prostitution parlors in January of this year. But the cleanup efforts seem to have no impact.
24 hours a day, there's prostitution running wild here. There is clearly sex trafficking. We got rampant drug sales.
Former council member Hiram Montserrat and Ramon Ramirez, founder of the Let's Improve Roosevelt Avenue Coalition, will be presenting to local and state officials a 5-point plan to tackle the uptick in illegal activities.
At least 120 police officers. We need both the 110 and the 115 precinct to receive an additional 50 police officers each. And we need this avenue, Roosevelt Avenue, to be under the command of one police precinct.
Business owners and workers tell us they are losing money because they are constantly getting robbed by gang members and criminal organizations.
Sometimes the people go and take this and run away. That's happened like 6 or 7 times in this month.
Donovan Richards should bring the mayor here with Moya and see if they can do the walk that we expect our children to do every day.
Yeah, so I want people to understand, this is not just limited to these big Democrat cities. As you can see, Democrats, they want these illegals to be placed in small towns, okay? It's coming to small town America across the country. That is what's happening, right? What you see happening in Chicago, New York City, you see it happening in Springfield. I mean, I did a story about this happening out in Alabama, right? Where you have the illegals that are being imported into these cities. Yeah, it's going to be happening across the country. And nobody's city, nobody's neighborhood, okay, nobody's small town is exempt from the impact of illegal immigration, the negative impact of illegal immigration. And that's what people got to understand. A lot of people think they're insulated. Oh, well, it's not going to affect me. It's not going to hurt me, right? This is not something that's going to impact me until it does, right? And then they'll be boo-hoo-whining and crying and saying, oh, well, I can't believe this happened, but you voted Democrat, right? This is basically what the black citizens of Chicago went through, right? They all voted for Brandon Johnson, even though Brandon Johnson told them straight up, I love the illegals, right? I think we should be a sanctuary city. They didn't expect to actually have to deal with the consequences of it. And then they're dealing with the consequences of it. They can't stand it, right? They're boo-hoo, whine, and cry, you know, justifiably, right? Justifiably. But I'm just saying that you should have known. You should have known that allowing unfettered illegal immigration, that being pro-open borders, that sanctuary cities was not a good thing. It should not require you to go through this in order to realize that, hey, this is not good for the country. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.